Hello, welcome. Come in.
I must introduce all our friends.
Welcome to WatchMojo UK, and today we're looking at close friends who committed crimes or atrocities both in the UK and abroad.
John Duffy didn't act alone.
Police knew that they were looking for another man. He was still out there.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Hugh Edwards and Alex Williams.
He will also be required to complete a sex offenders program. He will also be on the sex offenders register for 7 years.
Now permanently ejected from the BBC and, presumably, most other workplaces, Hugh Edwards was convicted of making indecent images in July 2024. However, he didn't do this alone. The specific charge of making indecent images also applies to people who receive them, and the source of the images was a man named Alex Williams. Unlike Edwards, Williams isn't a well-known broadcaster, but he was the one who provided Edwards with nearly 400 total explicit images.
The CPS and the Metropolitan Police were able to prove that Edwards was receiving illegal images and videos involving children via WhatsApp.
Williams also pleaded guilty and got a longer 12-month sentence, also suspended like Edwards. Williams was only 25 at the time, but had already been convicted for similar offences in the past.
We are appalled by the crimes he has betrayed, not just the BBC, but the audiences who put their trust in him.
Leopold and Loeb.
An immaculate murder. We've killed for the sake of danger and for the sake of killing. We're alive. Truly and wonderfully alive. Even champagne isn't equal to us or the occasion.
In the 1920s, Chicago was rocked by one of the most disturbing crimes of the entire 20th century, when Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb murdered a 14-year-old boy. They became friends while studying at the University of Chicago and hatched a plan to commit the perfect crime, meticulously plotting how they would do it together.
To the perfect crime.
Their plan, which they thought was foolproof, began to go wrong very quickly, with the victim's body being found shortly after he went missing. They were also known to talk publicly about the case while the manhunt was ongoing. When they were arrested, they confessed relatively quickly, and upon pleading guilty, were given life sentences. Their relationship continued in prison until Loeb's death.
I wish they'd hung us right off the bat.
Is that your only reaction, Artie? No remorse, no feeling of
Remorse?
I wasn't expecting you to fall down on your knees and thank God for deliverance.
Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger.
Nixon made him a national figure, and together they reimagined U.S. foreign policy.
Neither former U.S. President Richard Nixon nor Henry Kissinger, one of the U.S. administration's most hawkish advisors for years, directly killed anybody with their own hands, but many have speculated that Kissinger may have been responsible for millions of deaths through his influence on US policymaking, along with Nixon, who was found guilty but ultimately pardoned for his role in the Watergate scandal.
Some called him a war criminal for his role in bombing Cambodia and widening the war in Vietnam.
The tapes Nixon recorded of his conversations with Kissinger have long been public, and show Kissinger influencing Nixon to support authoritarian regimes and violent dictatorships.
One transcript suggests Nixon was worried about Kissinger, one of his closest aides, getting too involved in Middle East policy because Kissinger was Jewish.
Kissinger has been blamed for the bombing of Cambodia, which was carried out in secret by him and Nixon with no support from Congress, and is widely regarded to have been illegal.
We all know that this whole, almost hysteria about the bombing has been a media-created damn thing.
William Burke and William Hare, Edinburgh's notorious body snatchers, were active all the way back in the 1820s.
One day, two suave young gentlemen appeared within my view.
I'm Mr. Burke. I'm Mr. Hare. How do you do?
Their crimes were motivated by profit rather than by the depraved thrill of the act, since at the time, doctors performing anatomical studies would pay cash for cadavers of, shall we say, ambiguous origin. After stealing the first body, they saw how much money there was in it and began to carry out murders to keep the cash flowing.
The body was vetted by Dr. Knox himself, who didn't ask
any questions about where it came from and authorised a payment of £7 10 shillings.
They would get as much as £10 for a body from surgeon Robert Knox, almost £1,000 in today's money, and ended up killing 16 people together before they were caught. They were executed and their bodies were dissected, just like their victims.
Another slab of fresh human organ, bones and flesh. Another gory sesh. Excellent views.
Adolf Hitler and Oswald Mosley.
Now, when you started to get interested in Germany, and in particular in Hitler, was that because Sir Oswald Mosley was the head of the British fascist movement?
Fascism swept Europe in the 1920s and 1930s, with various fascist movements able to make themselves seem politically legitimate before the outbreak of the Second World War. One of Britain's most prominent fascists was, of course, Oswald Mosley, who founded the British Union of Fascists in 1932.
Other dictators have killed far more people than Hitler ever killed.
When he got married to Diana Guinness, one of the more fascist-minded Mitford sisters, they did it in Nazi Germany, in Goebbels' house, with Hitler as a guest. He was also planning a fascist coup in the UK, only to be thwarted by MI5. He and his wife were seen as so dangerous that they were kept imprisoned for the duration of the war, and the BUF was dismantled.
And did you think that the government was wrong to put you in prison at that time?
Thought they were monstrous, yes.
Is that why you said you'd like to shoot Winston Churchill and the rest of them?
Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein.
Andrew stayed close to him, so close that he was invited to one of his daughter's 18th birthday parties.
A lot of people were known to have associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and perhaps the most prominent friendship to come out of the scandal is Epstein's relationship with convicted trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently in prison. But more attention has undoubtedly been on Prince Andrew, who, as a member of the royal family, has been protected from consequences at every turn.
We ended up sending Prince Andrew's lawyers a letter offering to talk to them. He ignored it, which was probably one of his biggest mistakes, besides the interview, and then we sued him.
Andrew paid an undisclosed amount of money to settle the case one of Epstein's most prominent victims, the late Virginia Giuffre, brought against him. He's continually denied being friends with Epstein after Epstein's earlier conviction, despite clear evidence to the contrary, like them being repeatedly photographed together.
Those photographs prove that Prince Andrew was definitely consorting with a sex offender.
Ian Brady and Graeme Young.
Their killers with their blank faces would become instantly recognisable as the killer couple, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley.
We're not including Ian Brady and Myra Hindley here together because they were a couple, not friends. But did you know that while in prison, Brady struck up a friendship with Graeme Young, the teacup poisoner? According to Brady himself, in a book he wrote about serial killers that was somehow allowed to be published, they bonded over their mutual love of Nazi Germany. Elsewhere, and claims began to circulate that Myra Hindley had become friends with Rose West while they were both in HMP Durham.
I was reading your book, Vanessa, and you actually had a cup of tea from Myra Hindley. I mean, I'm not sure I would have drank that tea. Did you drink it?
But they both denied it, saying they were on the same wing and therefore aware of each other, but weren't friends. Rose West isn't exactly known for her friendly, welcoming demeanour.
Tonight, police appealed for information about 9 more young women who disappeared after visiting their home in Cromwell Street, Gloucester.
Jon Venables and Robert Thompson. One of the most hideous crimes in history was the abhorrent murder of toddler James Bulger at the hands of Jon Venables and Robert Thompson, who were both 10 years old at the time in 1993.
2 10-year-old boys who lured James Bulger from the safety of his mother's side.
Police officers were amazed and horrified that 2 boys so young themselves had committed such a violent crime, and the mugshots of Venables and Thompson were all over the papers. The pair were close friends, often skiving school together and going shoplifting. In the decade since, Venables has been repeatedly in and out of prison for sex offences.
The police did come round and they said they're going to get released, and I just sat there and I thought,
or where do I go from here?
Thompson, meanwhile, seems to have been rehabilitated. He was released on parole in 2001 and, as far as we know, has never reoffended.
And just as Denise feared, Venibals did indeed go on to reoffend.
John Duffy and David Mulcahy.
It was very much teamwork. Everything they ever did was teamwork, even from school days.
Known as the Railway Killers, Duffy and Mulcahy were unique in that they were serial killers who killed together rather than alone. But violence was always part of their friendship, since meeting as children while attending the same school.
And he says during the confession, I wasn't alone with this. I was with my friend, David Mulcahy.
Initially, their attacks on women exiting isolated railway stations weren't lethal, but their crimes soon got more extreme and they began to kill. Duffy was arrested and charged first, but there was initially insufficient evidence to also charge Mulcahy.
He was very cocky, extremely cocky. He was making no comment to every question that was put to him.
Eventually, though, Duffy gave interviews explaining Mulcahy's part in the crime, and Mulcahy was tried 11 years after Duffy and also convicted of the crimes.
You've now got a witness who's telling you, this is what happened, this is what we did, and this is who I was with.
Jimmy Savile and Margaret Thatcher.
You realise it's a great privilege for us to be allowed in the House of Commons like this, because they're very, very busy people.
Savile was friends with countless high-profile Brits during his lifetime thanks to his untouchable public image and widespread charity work. Many of those former associates found themselves caught in the net of Operation U-Tree, like Ray Terrett and Freddie Starr. However, Savile was also famously friends with then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
Right, now then, here we are, young ladies and gentlemen, in the office of a very important lady, Mrs. Thatcher, who very kindly consented to give up some of her very little time that she's got.
The two would exchange letters, eat together, and Savile was also often invited to Chequers, the Prime Minister's country house. In letters from Savile to Thatcher that have now been released to the public, Savile talked about the young female patients at the hospitals he volunteered at, saying they were jealous of him for spending time with Thatcher and suggesting that he should get a knighthood, which he eventually did.
I thought you were going to fix my getting into number 10.
I've already done so, but I was going to see you privately about that.
Let us know what true crime videos you think we should make next.
Do hurry up, Dennis! You know we've got Jimmy Savile coming to dinner.